Okay, the video's good. The mic's, yeah, the mic's good. We're rolling, people. We are rolling. Welcome to the first video of the Seeker sessions. And today we are going to talk about intellectual depletion and hence a disappearance of encoded messagery, a disappearance of metaphors. Yeah, that. Let me give you a background. Today's world is totally factory based. The way the kids are being fashioned. I was giving tuitions to a bunch of kids few months ago, and you wouldn't believe the syllabuses. Their syllabuses have a subject called robotics. In that subject, they are being taught about light dependent resistance. That kid who is in the third grade doesn't know a damn thing about the structure of an atom, and he's being taught robotics, light dependent resistance. This is factory conditioning of the human brain. It is telling you a bunch of stuff and making you condition that you have to think about this only. And when it is started in the childhood days, when there's no creative field that they are going to go to, they say during my times they said let your children go and play in the grounds. We got towards all this robotic bullshit later. They used to say go to the grounds and play. Even if the pressure of education, the pressure of all uh, academics was massive. I can't imagine. I mean, I can't explain you what the pressure was. But we had the chance to go play. Later, it all depleted, of course. In a kid who's studying in a third grade. And I find it so depressing. The mothers, the parents, they consistently told me make the kid memorize. And I asked them, does your kid have the base which he's studying? They were like, no, he doesn't need to. If he memorizes, he can write the tests. When did collection of knowledge, when did fathoming knowledge become writing a bunch of test papers? The bunch of test papers are going to give you, okay, a job and stuff like that. That's required. The economic aspect is definitely required. I'm not negating that fact. But when did, you know, explaining, making a kid understand stuff become such old fashioned stuff? Like you have to memorize things. You have to memorize about a light dependent resistor. When you don't know what a proton is, what an electron is, what a neutron is, where are they present? What do they do? What is the atomic weight? How are they arranged in an atom? What's the Pauli's exclusion principle? What is, you know, what is an azimuth? You don't know that. If you don't know that, if you don't know how electromagnetism works, how can you condition a child to think that way? But they're doing it. And I am absolutely sad about it. They're like, okay, we are making them study, they'll know about it eventually. But what's the fun in doing that? If education isn't fun, it education isn't philosophy. What's the fun in education? It's more like, it's a factory, and you are pushing out kids out of a factory, giving them the okay tested mark, and pushing them into the working field, because your work field has been purely based on factory working. And when you are in a place like India, which is known for sporting potential, where the competition is cutthroat, you can't imagine what the competition is. There, this becomes the most viable option. Can you imagine how sad those kids are, who don't even know that why they should be sad about the education process? Now, coming to encoded messagery, I gave you this example because I want you to think how people are being conditioned to work, to learn, and this conditioning would, you know, trash their intellectual ability, their philosophical ability. They'll be like, a plus b whole square, it's a square plus b square plus 2ab. Why did this 2ab come in the equation? Or how did it come? You know, it's you answer it through the area of a rectangle, right? And you are not understanding why certain things happen, but you are being taught that this happens and you have to do this to get the answer. We were weirdly taught mathematics during, the 11th and 12th grade. It's like integration of this. You have to find this certain thing inside the integration and then make it fall in it. You don't have to think why this is happening, where this is happening, and what's the reason behind all that. No, you can't think it behind a thing. You don't have the thought process behind this. You just know you have memorized a formula and you dump that formula inside. You know who does this? This is done for a robot. You push an algorithm and it pushes out the result because of the algorithm. We have been transformed into robots right now. That's why education has become so boring. When you read a Terence McKenna book, when you read, you know, Dune, I have this book. When you read a Charles Dickens book, when you read a Robert Frost poem, you slowly understand how romanticism works. You slowly understand what are the coded messages inside this poem. You know, when you read Shakespeare next, when you read Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, there's so many encoded messages inside each dialogue that you can, decouple them and, you know, intersect them and jot it down. You need time, though. You need time to sit and understand what Shakespeare's trying to say. I mean, Shakespeare was a genius because what he wrote down, or how he designed the, cover of his book, it's magnificent to know how from a book cover you can jot down the entire Fibonacci series. You can jot down the entire, you know, like the exponential series. You can do that with the Shakespearean book. People say it's trash. People say we have this weird habit of ordo ab chaos. Ordo ab chaos means order from chaos. Go Google it, find ordo ab chaos from. Google it down. You'll understand. So it's a weird habit to do it. And you can just say, even in the case of the Bible code, You can just say we are taking random patterns and we are figuring out stuff. But it's also magnificent that you can condition your mind to think that way, right? And if I even tweet out an encoded message, people don't understand that. People like take it in the literal sense. You don't okay, that's cute. You think like that. That's cute. You feel like that, but it's just not that. Come on. Do you think they also don't go through your feed? Do you think that a person posting a bunch of stuff which you have ignored? It's so funny. People ignore your entire feed. They'll, you know, go to the most randomest post. This is the most horrible thing about social media. People ignore your entire feed. They don't know what you post about. And when you post an encoded message, they're like, nah, 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 mate. It's not like that. It's like this, It's like that. Like sometimes I gotta write. It's an encoded message over here. You gotta understand what encoded. Now there are very few people who would question back what encoded message. The curious mind is still present, and I'm happy that it's present. Most of them won't even question back what encoded message is there. They're like, okay, what's the whole thing about encoded messages? I feel literally sad when I sit in this empty room and just think that our ancestors, they had put in so much effort to encode each and every stuff. Even in architecture, they have encoded stuff. When you see these old churches, they on the windows, the patterns on these windows are actually frequency patterns. If you notice it, a particular frequency has been brought down on these windows in pattern. People they barely notice because in today's architecture, it's so bland. The latest architectural wonder, I would say, is the Ram Mandir in Ayodhya. It is all those nooks and crannies where things are happening. That's the mindset. Modern churches, horrible, horrible, absolutely horrible. Religious texts are the most fascinating texts. They're written so beautifully. I just don't understand. How can you read a religious text and not understand the metaphorical significance of that text? Your ancestors wrote that metaphor down for you to understand, thinking that if our intellectual abilities now are like this, right? If our intellectual abilities now are like this, tomorrow the posterity will have better intellectual abilities. They literally thought that way. They literally thought that way that our posterity will have better intellectual abilities because with every birth, the intellectual ability of a human needs to be better. Not the intellectual ability, actually, it's the processing speed, the learning speed of a human, the intelligence that they possess. It has to be better with increasing posterity. It has to go this curve. It cannot be this, that is the downward. It cannot be this. No, the same intellectual ability or the same intelligence cannot be harbored by consecutive posterities. That means okay, the human race is coming to a downfall when the posterity is not more intelligent than the earlier generation. Generation Alpha will be more intelligent than Gen Z. Gen Z was meant to be more intelligent than the millennials. The millennials are meant to be more intelligent than the Gen X. If today the intellectual downfall or the stagnation of intellect has happened, that has happened just because of some powers who sit and think that depleting the human race is a very good option. And I'm 100% sure it's some human sitting somewhere who is doing these. That's why today you won't find a single encoded message anywhere. Go to the museums, go to a modern art museum. It's bullshit over there. It's bullshit. You cannot make art that is that horrible. The intellect, the creative mind is delivered through art, literature, philosophical thinking, science. Science is still, the fact is, truthfully, science today is holding on to its intellectual past and is producing better scientists, but they are all factory conditioned scientists. I think, but I'd say the free thinking ability comes for a scientist after a few years in service as a scientist. But the literature part, the art is a very powerful tool. It has gone. Tell me one image or one painting that made you think, yes, this is the next Da Vinci. You how can, after so many years, after a posterity that has come that has gone through so many years of evolution, of intellectual evolution, how come we have not produced another Da Vinci? How come we have not produced another Rabindranath Tagore? Today, people would blame you if you think this way. They think, you Vela Banda, a person with nothing to do, sit and think. Ve- Only the sadhus, only you know, the, they're not priests, I would say. They are this, I refer to them as sadhus. Only the sadhus have this power to sit and not think anything. The mind is always occupied with some thought, but the sadhus have learned to, absolutely decouple the mind from this realm. It's a great feat, but it's also sacrifice for the whole Maya that we live in. I know this video is getting too long right now, but I think we needed to talk about this because I'm at this pivotal point where it's a breakdown. How come we, as the posterity of Da Vinci, the posterity of Picasso, the posterity of the greatest sages India had ever produced, we're not being able to produce any more people like that? How? I have no affirmations or expectations from the Gen Z or Gen Alpha. They are being programmed to not believe in freedom. Freedom to them has been programmed the most horrible ways possible. It's really sad. I'm sitting in a lonely room making videos talking about these things. How sad it is that people don't want to talk to me about these. They don't want to talk to me about how did your day go. There's nothing. How can you spend a day where you have nothing interesting to tell somebody? Okay. You could have seen a spider who's trying to spin his web. You could have noticed a bird who is flying in the most whimsical patterns. You could have noticed that there's an insect in your room who is only sitting at certain positions, right? You could have noticed an army of ants who are, protecting their babies as they move to a new colony. Truthfully, you didn't have anything interesting to tell me. You didn't have that intellectual prowess to sit and ponder, to sit and discover things that nobody else does. The sheer downfall is staggering. And me, myself, I feel claustrophobic, absolutely claustrophobic. If you're thinking that why is he looking there, speaking nothing, I had no thought in my mind. I didn't know what to say unless this. And today, as I speak, as I speak against this whole barbaric policy that has cut down every intellectual ability, that has made us so intellectually inferior that metaphors have been forgotten. Metaphors. Can you imagine? We're going to wrap it up right now, but I just want to sit right now. No thought in my mind. Just